It was a normal Monday morning at the city school, the kind where the sunlight poured softly through the big windows and the hallways smelled faintly of polished floors and cafeteria food. Students were moving between classes, laughing and talking about their weekend plans. In the middle of all this, there was a boy who moved quietly, almost like he didn't want anyone to notice him. He was a student who kept to himself, always polite, always focused on his work, and always careful not to draw attention. Most people didn't know much about him, and that was just how he liked it. He had a secret passion, one that he had never shown anyone at school. He loved playing the piano, and he was extraordinarily talented, though he had only shared his music with his family or a few close friends. In the classroom, the boy was sitting at his desk, listening to the teacher explain a lesson about history. He took notes carefully, his handwriting neat and precise. Outside, the noise of other students drifting in from the hallway didn't bother him. He was used to being in his own little world. He didn't complain, he didn't argue, and he didn't seek attention. Teachers often overlooked him because he didn't call out in class or get involved in debates. But inside, he dreamed big. He dreamed of performing in front of a crowd, of feeling the music flow through him, of making people feel something with his playing. Across the hall, the principal was in a different mood. He was known for being strict, but he also liked to joke around in ways that sometimes made students uncomfortable. He liked to assert his power and remind students who was in charge. That day, he was walking through the hallway, greeting students with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He spotted the boy moving quietly between classes and something crossed his mind. He decided, just for fun, to pull a little joke. He wanted to see the boy embarrassed in front of everyone. He didn't know the boy's secret, and he had no idea what would happen next. The boy didn't notice the principal approaching until it was too late. The principal called out his name loudly, making the boy jump. The hallway seemed to get suddenly quiet as students turned to see what was happening. The principal smiled and said, in a joking tone, that the boy should go to the auditorium and play the piano for everyone during the assembly. He chuckled, expecting the boy to fumble, expecting him to be nervous and awkward. The boy felt a rush of anxiety. His heart started to beat faster, and his stomach tightened. He didn't know why the principal had singled him out, and he didn't know how to react. But something inside him didn't let fear take over. He took a deep breath and nodded politely, even though he wanted to shrink and disappear. He had faced challenges before, even if they were small ones, and he knew he could handle this too. He had practiced piano for years, had poured his heart into every note, and he knew that he had something special inside him. Even though he felt nervous, there was also a quiet determination. He would not let this moment be a humiliation. He would turn it into something powerful. The walk to the auditorium felt longer than usual. Students whispered as he passed, some giggling, some curious, some looking skeptical. The boy kept his eyes forward, trying not to pay attention to their reactions. Every step he took was filled with tension, but also a strange sense of calm. He could feel the weight of the situation, but he could also feel the rhythm of his own heartbeat, a rhythm that matched the music he had played in his room 1,000 times before. When he reached the auditorium, the principal was already standing near the piano, smirking. There was a small crowd of students and teachers, all waiting to see what would happen. Some students whispered jokes, assuming this would be funny, while others looked on with curiosity. The boy walked slowly to the piano, feeling the cool air of the room and the polished surface of the piano keys under his fingertips. He sat down on the bench, adjusted the seat, and took another deep breath. The room seemed to hold its breath with him, waiting for the first note. At first, he hesitated, unsure whether to start softly or boldly. Then, he placed his fingers on the keys and pressed gently. The first note rang out, clear and smooth, filling the room with a sound that made some students stop laughing and turn their heads. He began to play, and the music came naturally, flowing through him as if it had been waiting to be heard. The melody was beautiful, complex, and precise, but it also had emotion, something that spoke to anyone listening. The principal's smile faltered slightly, though he tried to hide it, because he hadn't expected this. The boy's playing was not at all what he had imagined. As the music continued, the room grew quieter. Students leaned forward, eyes wide, captivated by the sound. Teachers exchanged looks of surprise. The principal, who had expected embarrassment, felt a shock run through him. He realized that he had underestimated the boy. The boy's fingers moved across the keys with confidence and skill, each note perfectly timed, each chord full of emotion. He was telling a story with the music, a story that no one had expected, a story that held everyone's attention. Time seemed to stretch as the boy played. He forgot about the principal's joke, forgot about the whispers and the skeptical looks. He was lost in the music, and the music was lost in him. Every note was deliberate, every pause meaningful, every chord touching hearts. Some students had tears in their eyes, moved by the beauty of the performance. Teachers shook their heads in disbelief. The principal, standing near the back, was speechless. His joke had completely backfired. What was meant to embarrass the boy had turned into a moment of awe and admiration. When the last note faded, the room stayed silent for a moment, as if no one could believe what they had just heard. Then, a wave of applause erupted, loud and genuine, filling the auditorium with energy. Students cheered, some standing, some clapping furiously. Teachers joined in, some whistling, some smiling broadly. The principal could only nod, humbled by the experience. The boy smiled quietly, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and happiness. He had turned a moment meant to humiliate him into something extraordinary. He had shown his talent to the world, and in that moment, he realized that he could achieve anything if he believed in himself. From that day on, the boy was seen differently. Students who had ignored him or underestimated him now looked at him with respect. Teachers who had overlooked his quiet nature now recognized his talent. The principal learned a lesson about underestimating others and about the power of hidden potential. And the boy, he continued to play, to practice, and to share his music with those who truly listened. That Monday morning had started like any other, but it ended with a moment that no one in the school would ever forget. The boy had turned a cruel joke into a triumph, and in doing so, he had changed the way everyone saw him and perhaps the way he saw himself too. The boy had returned to his seat after the assembly, and though the applause still echoed in his ears, he tried to act calm. Inside, his heart was still racing, and he couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. The experience had been overwhelming, but also exhilarating. He had faced what everyone thought would humiliate him, and he had turned it into something unforgettable. But as he settled back into his regular classes, he noticed the way students were looking at him differently. Whispers followed him through the hallways, but this time they weren't mocking whispers. They were curious, admiring, and sometimes even apologetic. Some students gave him small smiles, as if to acknowledge what he had done, and it made him feel seen in a way he had never felt before. During lunch, he sat quietly in the cafeteria, picking at his food. He could feel the eyes on him from every table. Some students whispered about the performance, others discussed what they thought of his skill, and a few were already planning to ask him if he could play again for a school event or even a small recital. He had never sought recognition, but he couldn't deny that it felt good to be acknowledged for something he loved so much. For once, he felt proud of being himself without hiding his talent. Meanwhile, the principal was pacing in his office. The plan to make a joke had clearly backfired. He replayed the moment in his mind, feeling a mix of embarrassment and astonishment. The boy had not only handled the pressure with grace, but he had also outshined everyone in the room. The principal had never seen anything like it. He realized that he had underestimated the boy completely. What he had intended as a moment of humor had turned into a display of brilliance. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he had been wrong to judge someone by appearances. The boy's quiet demeanor had misled him, but his actions had spoken louder than anyone could have expected. In the classroom after lunch, the teacher asked the students if anyone had ever tried something they were afraid of and succeeded. The boy remained silent, not out of shyness but because he was still processing everything that had happened. When he looked around, he noticed the subtle nods and smiles from his classmates, and he felt a sense of belonging he hadn't felt before. They weren't just seeing the boy who kept to himself anymore. They were seeing someone with courage, someone who could face fear and transform it into something extraordinary. It was a small change, but it meant a lot. Word of the performance spread quickly through the school. Teachers began to mention it in staff meetings, praising the boy's talent and composure. Some of the students who had once ignored him started approaching him with questions about his piano practice. They wanted to know how he had learned so quickly, how he had managed to perform under pressure, and whether he would ever play again. The boy answered politely, careful not to boast, but he felt a quiet joy knowing that people genuinely wanted to understand his skill. For the first time, he realized that his talent could inspire others, and that feeling was deeply satisfying. Even in the days following the assembly, the principal continued to reflect on the incident. He decided to make amends in his own way. He organized a small meeting with the boy, offering praise for his courage and acknowledging that his earlier behavior had been thoughtless. The boy accepted the words politely, though he didn't need them to feel proud. The real reward had been the experience itself, the chance to show his abilities and gain respect. Still, the recognition from the principal carried weight because it came after a moment of humility, and it meant that one of the adults he respected had seen him for who he truly was. Outside of school, the boy continued to practice piano as he always had, but now there was a new sense of purpose. He felt motivated to refine his skills even further, to explore new pieces, and to experiment with the music he created. The experience at school had shown him that his talent could not be hidden forever, and it had given him the confidence to share it more openly. He started imagining future performances, small recitals for friends and family, and even competitions. Each thought filled him with anticipation and excitement, and he realized that his journey with music was only just beginning. Back at school, the social dynamics began to shift. Students who had once teased or ignored him now treated him with respect, sometimes even asking for his advice or opinions in class discussions. He didn't let the attention change him. He remained humble and focused, never letting praise distract him from his studies or his practice. But he also learned to enjoy the small gestures of acknowledgement, the nods, the smiles, the polite greetings in the hallway. It was a reminder that talent and hard work, when shared with courage, could open doors that had seemed closed. The principal, now more cautious about his jokes and interactions, observed the boy from a distance during school events. He noticed how naturally the boy carried himself, how his quiet confidence had grown, and how the students responded positively to his presence. The principal realized that true leadership wasn't about asserting power through jokes or intimidation. It was about recognizing potential, encouraging growth, and respecting the abilities of others. The boy's performance had inadvertently taught an important lesson about empathy and awareness, one that the principal would not forget. In classrooms, hallways, and even during school assemblies, the boy's story became an inspiration. Teachers shared it as an example of courage under pressure. Students discussed it as proof that talent could be hidden in the most unexpected people. And the boy, while still humble and reserved, carried a new sense of self-assurance. He knew that his abilities were real, and that facing challenges with poise could turn even a difficult or embarrassing situation into an opportunity to shine. Days turned into weeks, and the boy continued to balance schoolwork and piano practice with growing confidence. Every time he sat at the piano, he remembered the assembly, the principal's joke, and the reactions of his peers. Instead of fear or anxiety, he now felt excitement and determination. He realized that music was not just a hobby. It was a way to communicate, to inspire, and to leave a mark on the world. The assembly had been a turning point, a moment that showed him that he could rise above expectations and that true talent could never be hidden for long. By the end of the week, the school had fully absorbed the lesson of the performance. Teachers mentioned it in passing during lessons as motivation. Students who had once doubted themselves or others began to consider their own hidden talents. The boy had become more than a student. He had become an example, someone whose courage and skill could make a difference simply by being authentic. His story was quietly spreading, influencing attitudes and reminding everyone that judging someone by appearances could lead to missed opportunities and surprises. The boy himself knew that this was just the beginning. The principal's joke had been the spark, but the music was his own fire. He understood that challenges would continue, that there would be other moments where he might face doubt or fear, but he now had the tools to handle them. With each note he played, with each melody he created, he was building not just skill, but confidence, resilience, and a sense of purpose. The school might have been shocked by one performance, but for him, it was the start of a journey that would continue to grow and inspire, far beyond the walls of the auditorium and long after the echoes of that first applause had faded. The days after the assembly were filled with quiet excitement for the boy. Though he continued attending his classes and doing his homework like any other student, he carried with him a sense of anticipation he had never experienced before. Students now greeted him differently in the hallways. Some stopped to ask about the piano, others just gave him respectful nods. The boy noticed the change but didn't let it distract him from what mattered most: his love for music and the chance to keep improving his skills. One afternoon, the school announced an upcoming talent showcase. Teachers encouraged students to participate, saying it was a chance to show their skills and passions. The boy's heart raced when he heard this. At first, he hesitated, unsure if he should put himself in the spotlight again. Memories of the assembly came back: the fear, the nervousness, the thrill, and finally, the overwhelming pride. He realized that the showcase was not a joke or a trap. It was an opportunity, a moment where he could truly express himself and inspire others without anyone underestimating him. He decided to sign up. Every day after school, he spent hours at the piano, practicing the pieces he wanted to perform. Each note, each chord, each melody became more refined. He experimented with dynamics, timing, and emotion, wanting to make every performance unique. He poured all his energy into preparing for the showcase, knowing that this was his chance to share not just his skill, but also the feelings that music brought to him. The piano had always been his companion, and now it was his voice. Meanwhile, whispers about his assembly performance had reached every corner of the school. Students who had been skeptical of him now waited to see what he would do next. Some were genuinely curious, while others had begun to admire the quiet boy who could command such attention with music. Teachers also began to take a closer look, encouraging him privately and offering guidance on technique and presentation. Even the principal, who had been humbled by the previous event, quietly observed from a distance, curious to see how the boy would handle this new opportunity. The day of the talent showcase arrived. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and a few parents. The energy was electric, filled with anticipation for the performances. Many acts were impressive, showing a variety of talents, but everyone was waiting to see what the boy would do. He felt the familiar mix of nervousness and excitement as he walked toward the piano. This time, however, there was no mockery, no joke, only expectation and curiosity. He sat on the bench, adjusted the seat, and placed his hands on the keys. He paused for a moment, feeling the silence of the room, and then began to play. The first notes were soft, delicate, and precise, drawing everyone into the music. The melody seemed to float through the air, capturing attention immediately. Students who had been chatting moments before stopped, and even the teachers leaned forward slightly, intrigued by the beauty and depth of the performance. The principal, watching from the side, felt a renewed sense of awe. The boy's fingers moved gracefully across the keys, each note flowing seamlessly into the next. The music told a story, one of emotion, determination, and quiet strength. It was clear that this performance was not just about skill. It was about conveying something deeper, something that touched the heart of everyone listening. As the piece continued, the boy grew more confident. He played with feeling, adjusting tempo and volume to match the emotions he wanted to convey. Students could sense the story behind the music, and many were moved. Some leaned forward, unable to look away, while others had tears in their eyes, touched by the power of the melody. Even the principal, who had intended to laugh at him once, could not hide his admiration. He realized that the boy's talent went far beyond what anyone had imagined. The piano had become an extension of the boy himself, a way to communicate what words could not express. The climax of the piece approached, and the boy's fingers moved faster, more confidently, dancing across the keys with precision and grace. The music swelled, filling the auditorium with sound and emotion. Every note was intentional, every pause meaningful. The audience was captivated, completely absorbed in the performance. Students whispered to each other in awe, teachers exchanged glances, and the principal found himself holding his breath, realizing that he had been completely wrong to underestimate the boy. This was more than a performance. It was a revelation. When the final note echoed and faded into silence, there was a moment where no one spoke. The room held its collective breath, as if it could not believe what had just happened. Then, slowly, applause began to build. Students cheered, clapped, and some even whistled in appreciation. Teachers joined in, some smiling broadly, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The principal, who had been humbled before, now stood with genuine admiration, realizing that he had witnessed something extraordinary. The boy had turned yet another opportunity, once filled with anxiety and expectation, into a moment of awe and inspiration. After the performance, the boy received congratulations from teachers, students, and even the principal. The praise was genuine, heartfelt, and earned. People asked him about his practice, how he learned to play with such emotion, and whether he would perform again in the future. The boy answered humbly, explaining that he simply loved music and that he practiced every day. He didn't boast, but his calm confidence spoke volumes. Everyone could see that his talent was not just about skill, but about dedication, heart, and passion. The principal reflected on the boy's journey. He realized that the boy's quiet demeanor and modesty had masked a remarkable talent. The previous assembly had been a lesson in humility for him, and this showcase had reinforced it. He understood that leadership was not about asserting power or expecting to control situations. It was about recognizing potential, supporting growth, and respecting the abilities of others. The boy's performance had taught him something he would never forget. For the boy, the experience reinforced his love for music and his understanding of his own abilities. He felt more confident than ever, not just in his talent, but in himself. He realized that facing challenges, whether intended as jokes or genuine tests, could lead to extraordinary outcomes if approached with courage and determination. He also understood that sharing his gift with others could inspire and move people in ways he had never imagined. Music had become not just a personal passion, but a bridge to connect with others, to express what could not be said in words, and to create moments of shared awe and emotion. In the days following the showcase, the boy's life at school began to change. Students sought his guidance and advice on music, teachers encouraged him to participate in more events, and the principal made efforts to correct past misjudgments. The boy continued to remain humble and focused, practicing daily and maintaining his studies, but he carried a newfound confidence that came from knowing he could shine even under pressure. He had turned moments of doubt and expectation into triumphs, proving not only his skill but also his character. The story of his performance spread beyond the school. Parents, local community members, and even nearby schools heard about the talented boy who had turned a joke and an ordinary assembly into something unforgettable. His journey became an example of courage, determination, and the power of hidden talent. The boy continued to practice and prepare for future performances, but he also understood the deeper lesson, that opportunities, challenges, and even moments of doubt could be transformed into triumphs through dedication, focus, and belief in oneself. The music was not just notes on a page. It was a voice, a story, and a way to touch lives in ways words could never achieve. The boy had been preparing for the next school performance for weeks. Every day after classes, he would sit at the piano in the music room, fingers dancing across the keys, creating melodies that were both intricate and full of emotion. This time, he wasn't performing because someone had asked or to prove a point. He was performing for himself, for the joy of music, and for the chance to touch the hearts of anyone who would listen. His practice was intense and deliberate. He focused on every detail, the dynamics, the tempo, the pauses, the crescendos. Every note had to carry meaning. Every chord had to tell part of a story. The day of the performance arrived. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and parents. The atmosphere was buzzing with anticipation. The audience had heard stories of the boy's previous performance, and curiosity ran high. Whispers floated through the room. What would he play this time? How much more talented could he possibly be? The boy, sitting backstage, took a deep breath. He felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but it was accompanied by excitement and determination. He knew that this performance was his moment to show his full potential. When the principal announced his name, a hush fell over the room. The boy walked to the piano with calm confidence, his hands hovering over the keys for a moment before he began. The first notes were soft and gentle, drawing the audience in immediately. They were not just notes. They were emotions, flowing naturally from his fingers. Students who had whispered and laughed before were now completely silent, eyes fixed on him. Teachers leaned forward, intrigued by the depth and precision of his playing. The principal watched, speechless, realizing that this was not just a talented student but a remarkable musician. As the boy continued, the complexity of the piece became apparent. His fingers moved with speed and accuracy, effortlessly transitioning between high and low notes. The music was alive, full of emotion and intensity. It seemed to tell a story that captivated everyone in the room. Students exchanged glances, unable to believe the skill they were witnessing. Teachers whispered in awe, impressed by his mastery. Even the principal, who had once thought to make a joke at the boy's expense, was in disbelief. The boy had taken what was meant to be an ordinary school performance and transformed it into something extraordinary. Midway through the piece, the boy played a section that was both delicate and powerful. The notes floated gracefully, creating a sense of serenity, then built to a powerful climax that filled the room with energy. The audience felt every emotion, from the quiet gentleness to the intensity and passion. The boy was no longer just playing music. He was communicating feelings that words could never capture. Some students had tears in their eyes, others sat in awe, completely absorbed by the performance. The principal realized that his previous assumptions had been completely wrong. The boy's talent was beyond anything he had imagined. The boy's confidence grew as he reached the final part of the piece. His fingers moved faster, more assuredly, gliding over the keys with precision and grace. Every chord, every note, every pause was intentional. The music swelled, filling the auditorium with sound and emotion. The audience was completely captivated, their focus entirely on him. Students who had once doubted or ignored him now watched with admiration and amazement. Teachers exchanged impressed glances, and the principal, who had intended to laugh at the boy once, was now fully humbled. He had witnessed something truly extraordinary. When the final note sounded, it lingered in the air, a perfect ending to an unforgettable performance. For a moment, the auditorium was completely silent. Everyone was processing what they had just experienced. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started quietly but grew louder and louder, until the room was filled with cheers, claps, and whistles of admiration. Students jumped to their feet, some shouting words of praise, while teachers clapped vigorously. The principal, unable to hide his amazement, stood and nodded, acknowledging the boy's brilliance. The boy smiled quietly, feeling proud, but not boastful. He had played not for recognition but for the love of music, and the response was a reward in itself. After the performance, the boy was surrounded by students and teachers who wanted to congratulate him. They asked about his practice, how he learned such complex pieces, and whether he would perform again. He answered politely and humbly, explaining that it was dedication and love for music that drove him. His calm demeanor, combined with extraordinary talent, made a lasting impression on everyone he met. Even the principal approached him, this time with genuine respect, acknowledging that he had been completely wrong to underestimate him before. The boy's performance quickly became the talk of the school. Students who had once ignored him or doubted his abilities now sought his guidance, asking for tips on music and practice. Teachers recommended him for special events and recitals, recognizing that he had a gift that should be nurtured. The principal, reflecting on the event, realized that true leadership involved supporting and encouraging talent, not mocking or doubting it. The boy had taught a powerful lesson through his performance, one that would be remembered for years to come. Outside of school, the boy continued to practice with renewed motivation. He explored new musical styles, experimented with composing his own pieces, and dreamed of performing in larger venues. Each day, he refined his skills and deepened his understanding of music. The performance had given him confidence and direction. He realized that challenges, no matter how daunting, could be turned into opportunities for growth and expression. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was his voice, his story, and a way to connect with others on a deep emotional level. Back at school, the impact of the performance was still evident. Students treated the boy with newfound respect, often asking to hear him play or learn from his experience. Teachers encouraged him to participate in competitions and community performances. The principal, now more mindful of his behavior, made an effort to support and recognize students' talents, understanding that underestimating someone could lead to missed opportunities and unexpected lessons. The boy's influence had begun to shape the culture of the school, inspiring others to pursue their passions and embrace their abilities. The boy himself felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had faced expectations, doubts, and pressure, yet he had remained true to himself and his music. He understood that talent combined with dedication and courage could create moments of profound impact. The performance was a turning point, not just for him but for the entire school. It had shown that appearances could be deceiving, that quiet individuals could hold incredible abilities, and that challenges, when met with determination, could lead to extraordinary outcomes. As weeks passed, the boy continued to grow as a musician and as a person. He balanced his schoolwork with piano practice, always striving to improve, but also enjoying the joy of music. His story became an inspiration for his peers, teachers, and even the principal, reminding everyone that respect, humility, and recognition of hidden talent were essential. The boy had taken a situation that could have been embarrassing and turned it into a moment of triumph, proving that true skill and dedication could shine brightly, no matter the circumstances. After the boy's breathtaking performance, the atmosphere at school began to shift in ways he had never expected. Students who had previously ignored him or underestimated his quiet nature now approached him with curiosity and respect. Some would linger in the hallways to ask about his piano practice, while others shared their own dreams and hopes, inspired by the courage he had shown on stage. The boy, still modest and reserved, welcomed these interactions with gentle smiles and polite answers. He didn't boast, yet his presence carried a quiet confidence that drew people in. Teachers also began to notice the change. They spoke with him after classes, asking about his dedication to music, praising his talent, and encouraging him to participate in more school events and competitions. They realized that talent could come in unexpected forms, and that the boy's perseverance and humility made his accomplishments even more remarkable. The principal, in particular, reflected on his previous behavior, feeling a mix of remorse and admiration. He had intended to embarrass the boy with a joke, but instead, the boy had proven his worth in the most extraordinary way. It was a humbling lesson for him, one he would not soon forget. During lunch, the boy noticed students from different grades approaching him. Some shyly asked if he could teach them simple piano lessons or give advice on practice. Others just wanted to hear about the music he loved. He realized that his performance had created more than admiration. It had created connection. People were inspired not only by his skill but also by the way he handled pressure and stayed true to himself. This realization filled him with a sense of purpose. Music was no longer just a private joy. It had become a way to touch lives and bring people together. The principal, still reflecting on the event, decided to make a more formal acknowledgement. He called a meeting in his office with the boy and a few teachers. He spoke sincerely, admitting that he had misjudged him and that his attempt at a joke had been unkind. He praised the boy's talent, determination, and courage, acknowledging that he had turned a potentially embarrassing moment into one of inspiration. The boy listened quietly, accepting the praise with humility. The recognition meant something, but what mattered more was that he had stayed true to himself and his music. Following this meeting, the principal took steps to ensure that students were treated with more respect and that talent, regardless of appearance or quietness, was recognized. He encouraged teachers to look for hidden potential in students and to foster an environment where everyone felt safe to express their abilities. The boy's performance had not only changed how he was seen but had also influenced the school's culture. It became a story teachers shared to remind students of the importance of courage, dedication, and respect. The boy continued to practice diligently, pushing himself to reach higher levels of mastery. He explored new musical styles and techniques, composing small pieces that reflected his emotions and experiences. Each practice session became an opportunity to grow, not just in skill, but in confidence and self-expression. The applause and admiration from the school had been rewarding, but the real joy came from the music itself, the way it allowed him to communicate feelings that words could not capture. He understood that every note he played was a message, a way to connect with others and leave a lasting impression. Students began to see him as a role model, someone who demonstrated that dedication and authenticity could lead to remarkable achievements. They observed how he remained humble, how he treated others with kindness, and how he used his talent not to boast, but to inspire. Many started to reflect on their own potential, realizing that hidden talents could be discovered if they approached life with courage and commitment. The boy's journey became a symbol of hope and possibility, showing that even quiet, unassuming individuals could achieve extraordinary things. The principal also noticed the broader impact. Staff meetings now included discussions on how to identify and nurture students' talents. The school's culture began to shift toward encouragement and recognition rather than judgment and assumption. The boy's performance had sparked a change that went beyond a single moment of music. It had become a lesson in empathy, understanding, and respect for individuality. The principal, once quick to make a joke at the boy's expense, now used the story as an example of why it was important to value each student and recognize potential, wherever it might be found. At home, the boy's family noticed the difference as well. They saw the confidence and pride in his demeanor, even as he remained modest and focused. They encouraged him to continue pursuing music, supporting his growth and celebrating his accomplishments. The family felt a quiet pride, knowing that their son had faced challenges and expectations with grace and had emerged stronger and more inspired than ever. They understood that this journey was just beginning, and they looked forward to seeing where his talent and dedication would take him next. The boy also began to see himself differently. He realized that his quiet nature, once mistaken for shyness or weakness, was actually a strength. It allowed him to observe, reflect, and focus deeply on his passions. His perseverance and dedication had proven that true talent required patience, practice, and courage. He understood that success was not just about recognition from others, but about the ability to stay committed to one's values and passions, even in the face of doubt or expectation. As the school year continued, the boy's influence grew. Students who had once ignored or underestimated him now looked to him for guidance and inspiration. Teachers sought his input for musical events and performances. The principal, having learned a powerful lesson, made a point to recognize and encourage students in ways that were supportive rather than judgmental. The boy's story became a living example of how courage, skill, and authenticity could change not only one person's life, but also the lives of everyone around them. Through it all, the boy remained humble, focused on the music and the joy it brought. He continued to practice every day, honing his skills and exploring new pieces. Each performance became an opportunity to share a piece of himself, to connect with others, and to inspire those who were willing to listen. The applause, admiration, and recognition were meaningful, but the real reward was the music itself, the way it allowed him to express his emotions, connect with others, and create moments of beauty that would be remembered long after the notes had faded. The turning point had come not from winning competitions or gaining accolades, but from the courage to perform authentically and with heart. The boy's ability to rise above fear and expectation had earned him respect, not through force or assertion, but through talent, dedication, and character. Students, teachers, and even the principal had learned an important lesson: that underestimating someone could lead to missed opportunities, and that true strength often came from quiet confidence, humility, and hard work. The boy's story continued to inspire long after the initial performance. It reminded everyone that talent could be hidden, that courage could transform fear into triumph, and that authenticity was more powerful than any expectation or stereotype. He had taken what was meant to be a joke and turned it into a lesson for everyone, proving that dedication, skill, and heart could change perceptions and create lasting impact. His journey was not just about music. It was about resilience, self-belief, and the ability to inspire others by staying true to oneself. After the boy's remarkable performances and the admiration he had earned from the school, life began to change in ways he had never imagined. His reputation as a talented pianist spread beyond the classrooms and hallways. Students from other grades and even nearby schools began asking about him, wanting to hear him play or learn from his experience. Teachers recommended him for community events and recitals. Local newspapers and community boards shared stories of the young boy, whose courage and talent had turned a joke into inspiration. What had started as a challenging moment had now become a platform for him to share his gift with a wider audience. The boy continued to practice daily, dedicating time to mastering new pieces and experimenting with his own compositions. His dedication was not motivated by fame, but by the love of music itself. Each day he explored new melodies, new harmonies, and new rhythms. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a voice, and a way to tell stories. He discovered that music had the power to convey emotions that words could never capture. Every time he played, he felt a sense of freedom, purpose, and fulfillment that went beyond applause or recognition. At school, the atmosphere had changed. Students who had once underestimated their peers now looked for hidden talents and strengths. Teachers began to foster a culture of encouragement, seeking out students' abilities and giving them opportunities to shine. The principal, reflecting on the boy's journey, became more thoughtful in his approach to students. He made it a point to notice effort, dedication, and quiet talent, understanding that even the most unassuming students could achieve extraordinary things. The boy had not only changed his own life but had also influenced the school's culture, encouraging respect, recognition, and inspiration. The boy's family watched with quiet pride as he continued to grow. They had always supported his passion, but now they saw the impact it could have on others. They encouraged him to continue performing and practicing, but they also emphasized the importance of staying humble and true to himself. The boy understood that recognition and applause were rewarding, but the true value lay in dedication, authenticity, and the ability to inspire others through action rather than words. Each performance was a chance to share a piece of himself, to connect with others, and to make a difference, even in small ways. Students continued to be inspired by the boy's courage and perseverance. They began to see challenges differently, understanding that fear could be transformed into opportunity if approached with determination and confidence. Many students sought guidance from him, not only in music but in other areas of life, learning that dedication and consistency could lead to success. The boy became a quiet role model, showing that one did not need to be loud or assertive to make an impact. Influence could come from talent, kindness, and the courage to stay true to oneself. The principal observed the changes with a sense of reflection. He understood that the boy's journey had taught everyone, including him, a powerful lesson. Leadership and influence were not about jokes, authority, or asserting dominance. They were about recognizing potential, nurturing growth, and creating an environment where talent and courage were encouraged. The boys' performances had become more than musical events. They were demonstrations of character, perseverance, and the positive impact of encouragement and respect. As time passed, the boy participated in local recitals and community performances. Each event allowed him to share his music with a wider audience, further developing his skill and confidence. He approached each performance with humility, understanding that every opportunity was a chance to connect with people through music. The applause and admiration he received were meaningful, but the real joy came from knowing that his music could touch hearts and inspire others. He discovered that his gift had the power to create change and leave a lasting impression beyond the notes themselves. At school, the boy's story continued to influence students and teachers. Students became more supportive of one another, recognizing that hidden talents could be found in anyone. Teachers approach students with a new perspective, encouraging creativity, practice, and perseverance. The principal, now more aware of the impact of words and actions, fostered a culture of respect and recognition. The boy had inadvertently become a catalyst for positive change, demonstrating that talent, courage, and humility could inspire not only individuals but entire communities. The boy himself remained grounded. He continued to balance schoolwork, practice, and his personal life. He remained humble, knowing that his journey was just beginning. Each day brought new opportunities for growth and learning. He explored new pieces of music, refined his technique, and shared his knowledge with others. Through music, he discovered a sense of identity and purpose that went beyond recognition. He understood that true success was not measured by applause alone, but by the ability to inspire, connect, and make a difference through dedication and authenticity. Parents, teachers, and students continued to share the story of the boy who had turned a challenging moment into triumph. It became a source of inspiration for others facing obstacles or moments of doubt. The boy's courage demonstrated that talent and determination could overcome fear and expectation. His humility and dedication reminded everyone that success was not about showing off but about practicing, persevering, and staying true to oneself. His journey was a living lesson in resilience, character, and the transformative power of pursuing one's passions. Through all of this, the boy maintained a quiet determination. He practiced daily, performed with heart, and inspired others by example. He remained modest, never seeking recognition for its own sake, but always embracing opportunities to share his music and touch lives. He understood that his gift was not just about talent, but about using it responsibly and thoughtfully to make a difference. The boy's journey, which had started with a challenging and unexpected situation, had evolved into a story of courage, perseverance, and lasting impact. By the end of the school year, the boy had become a figure of inspiration, not only for his musical ability but for his character, determination, and humility. Students and teachers alike recognized the importance of nurturing talent, encouraging courage, and appreciating the potential within every individual. The principal, having learned a valuable lesson from the boy's journey, continued to implement changes in the school's culture, ensuring that respect, recognition, and encouragement became a central part of education. The boy's influence extended far beyond the piano, shaping the attitudes and values of everyone around him. Ultimately, the boy's story was a reminder that challenges, even those meant to test or mock, could be transformed into opportunities for growth, connection, and inspiration. His music had become a bridge, a way to communicate emotions, inspire courage, and create lasting impact. The applause, admiration, and recognition were meaningful, but the true reward lay in the ability to touch hearts, inspire others, and demonstrate the power of dedication, talent, and humility. The boy had taken a difficult moment and turned it into a legacy of inspiration, one that would continue to influence and uplift those who witnessed it for years to come. As he continued his journey, the boy knew that music would always be a central part of his life. It had given him confidence, purpose, and the ability to connect with others in profound ways. His experiences at school had taught him important lessons about courage, resilience, and the value of staying true to oneself. He realized that talent alone was not enough. It had to be nurtured, shared, and expressed with authenticity and dedication. Through this understanding, he embraced his future with hope, determination, and the knowledge that his music could continue to inspire and touch the lives of many.